Ho, ho, ho. Welcome to a very special Christmas edition of our discussion of Chapter 27 from The Abridged Golden Bough by Sir James Frazer. Joining me today are my co hosts from Northern India, Ostic, and the producer, the lovely producer, Santa's little reindeer, Jordan.
Hello. Not an elf
Hello,
this
hello.
time.
Yeah, not an elf. I'm glad you went with the reindeer ears. There was a choice between that and a bow, and I feel like this kind of had a more mythological mystique to it.
I think so.
Very, very Rothschildian Eyes Wide Shut party vibe as well.
No comment.
Yeah. So we hope everybody had a great Christmas or Saturnalia or whatever you celebrate. Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 28, the killing of the tree spirit, and we're going to dwell on the first two sections, the Whitsuntide mummers and the burying the carnival. I won't get too granular about it. I'll talk about it in grand motifs, and like so many people who get into the Golden Bough, we'll try to relate it in some way to our modern events, specifically the JFK assassination and perhaps other assassinations that are currently going on. But before we get into any of that material, I want to share some coming attractions. If you stick around past our initial conversation, you'll get to see us get into the archetypal psychohistory that stems from my exploration of the U.S. space program. We're largely fixated on Kennedy being the one that because he inaugurates it. And some of the images that I want to look at concentrate around the funeral of JFK, specifically his funeral horse, the riderless horse, Blackjack. So we're going to be talking about card games a lot today, specifically Blackjack. And looking into Blackjack, that got me looking into cartomancy and tarot. And I'll share some thoughts about Carl Jung on that subject of tarot. And then the horses thing was, it gets really deep. There's so much horse symbolism. I'm going to pick it up next time when we look at Odysseus. But this horse being named Blackjack, the cards that compose Blackjack, the natural Blackjack, are typically ace and a blackjack, and obviously call to mind Motorhead's "The Ace of Spades" song sung there by Lemmy. But the horse imagery in general connects back to King Arthur. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Jesse Weston's From Ritual to Romance and why it may have been in Apocalypse Now, and to help us think about the events that proceeded forward from the Kennedy assassination. And we're going to look a little bit deeper into some of the Camelot imagery via this horse. And of course, I have my idol up here, Dr. Steve Brule, to introduce the subject of horses. And perhaps lastly, this late edition on the title card is you'll see here an anthropomorphic Pop-Tart descending into the furnace of a toaster. This is from the Pop-Tart Bowl that was played last night. I think BYU was in it, and I forget who else they played. But anywho, it does in a lot of ways resonate with some of the things that we'll be talking about today in the Golden Bough, specifically the mock sacrifice and execution. It seems that this is a perennial motif proven out. I think Frazer is vindicated in some ways when we have these giant athletic contests, and it involves the sacrifice of a beloved snack food. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So before we go to the first slide, I'll just let Osik and Jordan weigh in.
I'm really excited to talk about it, and I'm really excited to see where you take the narrative with Apocalypse Now. So I'm pretty excited about that. I had some ideas about the thing that we discussed last episode. The thing being that when Jordan showed the photo of JFK Memorial, and you pointed out that the grass beside it, it looks like the Twin Towers. So, like some people speculate that those towers they represented a kind of a portal in a sense, right? There are gates around the portal to entry, and metaphorically, they are supposed to be the gates to the wealth of America or something. But in a sense, first of all, I saw them as pause button. I saw them they when you hit the pause button on the
Oh
timeline, it's
yes,
kind of
that's
like
interesting. Yeah.
So other things I thought like the thing that I realized as like an imagery was that like if it's supposed to be a portal and then you in case some I started imagining a void between those two towers, and it's like holding on to like the Kennedy thing in itself and it's floating in the sky. The
I
imagery
like
it
that.
looked like.
We should do a side by side comparison of those memorials at some point, or the towers and the Kennedy memorials, because they do seem to have this connecting motif.
Yeah, that, and I think I showed you a video about Full Metal Jacket that was foreshadowing the 9/11 thing when Private Pile and Joker were being killed. I sent you that, and you call. Maybe we could bring that up to entice the viewer. So whenever that's the topic of discussion. So that is what I was thinking about this week, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I think I've plugged this channel before. There's a very small YouTube channel called the Coherent Worldview that talks about portals in regards to 9/11, and connects it back to the film Ghostbusters. It's this little channel that gets slept on, but I think that's an indication of how powerful its insight is. So yeah, we'll talk about a little bit about that. I always thought the Twin Towers, the repetition of the number 11. You saw it as like a pause sign. I see like the number 11 and on 9/11 and the emergency number of 911 and flight 11. There's like all these different 11. So clearly there's something about the number 11 that's relevant to all of this. Jordan, what about you?
This might be one of my favorite collages.
Oh, really? Why do you like this one so much?
It's very fun. I don't know. The Pop Tarts really put it over the edge. I love that
Yeah.
last minute addition and going through their
Yeah.
Instagram page. Whoa, they are leaning into
They really are.
it. I I can see it might be offensive to some people. Like it's so funny.
You can only get so mad at the sacrifice and consumption of an anthropomorphic Pop Tart. It's like you come relax, relax. But at the same time, right, it does have like it has a lot of mythological and religious themes woven into it, right? And
Mhm.
resurrection themes as well. So if you don't know what we're talking about, spend a minute and a half watching this ceremony on YouTube. It's become known as like the people's football game. If your team doesn't get into the uh the bracket, there's always this to look forward to.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just super fun. I'm excited to get into tarot. I have We Need to Hang Up, a magician
That's
image
right. That's right.
framed over there for my sister.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Well, so today we're mostly going to be talking about horses and cards, but I thought I would start things off with a little bit of a synchronicity. If you can go to the first slide, Jordan, just to warm up my mind and my mouth here. So, in previous episodes, we have talked a great deal about Marilyn Monroe performatively reading, specifically the text of Ulysses and some of the Arthur Miller books, Enemy of the People and Death of a Salesman. And interesting, Nikki, Anna Nicole Wordsmith, she sent this to me because she'd been tracking this following our presentations. Here, she's like, look, we've got another blonde reading. And here we go. On the winter solstice, Ivanka Trump posts her favorite books of the year. And I was like, oh, this is there's got to be something really meaningful going on here. And as I went down the 13 or so books that she posted about, two of them really jumped out at me. First of all, she talked about reading Homer's The Odyssey for the fourth time and I believe, reading it to her daughter. And she also mentioned Joseph Campbell's The Power of Myth. So two of the 13 have been two of the books that we've talked about here. Not that I'm saying she's watching us and we're inspiring Ivanka Trump, though you never know, Ivanka. You're welcome to come on the show anytime if you are watching. But it does seem to be that there's a lot of, whether she intended it or not, there seems to be a lot of information density, especially if you look. Jordan might want to pull up the tweet. I'm not sure. We can talk about it a little bit. Um, just expanding the photograph. She's wearing blue and white. She's got this painting that's blue and white in the background. She has some blue slippers on that have some animals on them, which I'm sure we could spiral about if we really wanted to. Um, The other interesting thing about this is that within hours of her posting this, Christopher Nolan, which I thought he had done this already, but I guess not, posted the first real trailer of the Odyssey that's coming out in July. So both of them take to doing these types of posts that have seemingly deeper esoteric meaning because they're connected to the winter solstice. Now, maybe it's just people are in a reflective state of mind, but given what we've investigated with the Odyssey and seeing Odysseus as a solar character, posting it on the winter solstice when the sun is at its most diminished point a few days before Christmas, before it rises again, right? Seems to me to be too juicy to resist a conversation about. So I have the list of the other things she discussed, but again, we see sort of this narrative constellating around the Trumps or whatever. We last time we looked at how Trump had just changed the title of the Kennedy Center to the Trump Kennedy Center, and while he is doing that, a Spamalot is playing. And why is that relevant? Well, we've looked into that as being an analog, Camelot being an analog to the Kennedy administration, and we've looked at King Arthur being a solar figure. And all of these figures, be it Odysseus or King Arthur, have a return pressure baked into them. So my spidey senses are just like, is there something in the ether pointing at the return of something being revisited? So, oh, and there's very minimal dialogue in the Nolan trailer. One of the few lines is as Penelope saying to Odysseus, "Promise me you'll come back." So again, there seems to be this return pressure going on here. Does that mean the storm is upon us and JFK Jr. is going to pop out and reveal himself to be QAnon or something? Who knows? But it's I can sense it. So anyhow, just thought I'd share that. Do you guys want to comment on it?
Crazy timing. I also would swear we've seen a trailer before, but maybe it was just a bunch of press. I don't know.
I
Even,
mean, Ostic's the movie buff. I don't
yeah.
know. I mean, Ostic, did you think there was a Nolan trailer prior to the one that came out on the winter solstice, or are we hallucinating over here?
No, he just released a poster for it, not a trailer. But
Hmm.
I understand that he would have known about the solar myth thing, and he intentionally posted this on the winter solstice when the sun is at its lowest in the northern hemisphere. So it's about being at your lowest. And the trailer, it's not very, triumphant in nature. It's very somber and going down. A lot of people are commenting on it. Such a boring movie. It's like I don't feel a sense of that. It's like a first taste of the movie, like what is going to be. And even in the marketing of the movie, he's inserting his symbolism there. Like as this movie is being revealed to the public, the first thing that moving images that people see is about him with this man in his boat. The sun is at the lowest. All the shots in it, I don't think there are many shots that are very brightly lit. Most of the shots are in overcast, or they're in down in the you know whatever it's called, the cabin, the crew cabin, whatever it's called.
Right, right.
So it's like he's trying to weave that mythology into the reaction of the movie itself. And it's not that I'm speculating on. I know he's doing that because he does that a lot of times. He's very smart, and so he's doing that in that sense. He knows about the sun thing, and he's very consciously doing this.
Is he doing
Yeah,
magic? He's using
I'm not
magical
sure.
timing.
He's using magical time. I mean, again, this is such a huge investment and risk. You'd want to align it with something beautiful. I mean, if
Hmm.
I were him, I will. Why not release it on? It's so thematically, it's so poetic in that sense. Maybe he could be doing magic in that sense. That I don't want to speculate about it, but his set designer in his Batman movies was the grandson of Aleister Crowley. So
interesting.
literally, he had that guy on his set doing the production design in all the Batman movies, and there are a lot of 322 symbolisms. And in Oppenheimer, you can even see the runtime. The runtime is
Mm-hmm.
refers to 322, and it's a movie about Garden of Eden and everything. 322 is related to Garden of Eden. So he's very consciously does this thing. I don't know. Maybe he's doing black magic or something, but he's aligning himself with a magical timing. That's what I'm sure of.
I mean, I do
Nolan,
it. A lot of people do it. I don't. it's just interesting to me, what do people consider magic and what do people not consider magic, and what are people's intentions when they're doing it is really fascinating to me. I guess the psychology of ritual is interesting to me.
Why do you think he would release it on the winter solstice rather than, say, Christmas Day?
Well, we're gonna talk about the ace energy,
Mm-hmm.
and in the Crowley interpretations of the cards, he describes the ace energy as the root of the power of that suit. So he's planting the seed that's layered on top of what Ostick already pointed out about all the solar mythologies around it. And there's some traditions too where there's specific flowers and things that you plant either on the solstice or Christmas. And if they survive, they
Interesting.
come up, in the spring. So
Interesting.
we're it's the solar myth cycle. But
All
when you
right. All
think
right.
too, it's the semination of an idea. It's almost the most platonic form version of an idea.
All right. Well, I want you to explain that connection a little bit more in depthly when we get to the cards. Do you guys have anything to say about how Ivanka's dressed? Like the blue and white color pattern with her book. Did that mean anything to either of you? We don't have to dwell on it too long, but clearly there's been some kind of thought that's gone into this, right? Like we got to make sure your dress and your shoes and the painting match, and with the chair and the tree.
Hmm.
I don't. We have a lot to cover, so we don't have to sit here and decode this. But I'll put it on people's radars. There's something about this. There's a denser layer of information here.
Her
I mean, it's
fashion's
clearly manufactured. So it's like the people, they look for compositions and color harmony. They could have this cover story, but underneath they might have some other intentions. But yeah,
Yeah, it could be just a simple aesthetic choice, but I'm always looking for that deeper layer. Anything jump out to you, Jordan?
I would just say in general, her fashion is very intentional and often does have symbolic meanings. And if she's posting at length about these books that she's read, I think she might know what she's doing. But again, it's kind of the psychology of magic. How does she feel about it? I don't know. Does she think that this is encoding things in a like these frequencies are bringing specific energies to it, or is it just purely like metaphorical, or as Ostick said, is it just about color harmonies and balance and aesthetics? I don't
I mean,
know.
there's a vegetation vibe, right? She's in front of this tree, and there's like a vegetation pattern on her dress, and then
Yes.
there's I feel like there's like a beetle and something else on her shoes. So I think that's interesting. Not to mention the red Kabbalah bracelet. So that jumps out against
the
the blue
red
and white
Kabbalah
background.
bracelet, is that a bracelet or
That's what.
is like something that you tie? It's a string.
Well, it's a string. I'm not prepared to talk about it
That.
extensively, but
Yeah, I mean, lots of people
she's
use
a
them for different
she's
reasons.
she converted to Judaism. It's a Kabbalah
Oh,
bracelet.
right.
Yeah.
I didn't know
So
that.
yep. I
I didn't
mean,
know that either.
Jared Kushner is very close to Netanyahu, and that's her husband. So
I didn't know all that.
yeah. All right.
I
We got so much to talk about. But it is interesting. Maybe I'll figure it out over the week or something like that. I'll put it on your guys' radars. Maybe we have so many new listeners. We hit like 2,000 subscribers this
What?
past week. So that's a big milestone. So I
Yes, and
want to
so
thank both.
everyone can know when I ask Luke how should we celebrate this milestone, and his response is always work more.
We got to work harder. We got to get 10,000 before
Is
2027.
that really your intention, Dr. Luke?
No.
I think if it really were my intention, I'd be doing a lot more press. I want the people who find this channel to be early adopters and to be people who are here for the material.
Find
So
value.
yeah. Okay. Let's go to the contents of the chapter today. I'm not gonna go too deep into it. So I'll probably just combine the chapters on the sections on Whitsuntide mummers and the carnival. So we have, if you've been following along, I mean, the general idea is that in the spiritualized society where the king is the epicenter of all commerce and agriculture and health of the community. Um, we have looked at how the king is put to death at the first sign of infirmity or at the end of a fixed term to prevent that infirmity becoming obvious to everyone else in the community. And for a variety of different reasons, political reasons, sociological reasons, the growth of the empire, whatnot, it becomes um, uncivilized and destabilizing to continue to sacrifice the king, even though you may have things like we talked about last time, relics that can transfer the essence of the king to individuals who may not be in the genetic pool because he sacrificed all his children or whatever to the ruling force to preserve his kingship. So in time, the rituals get softened, and what we start to see with these Whitsuntide festivals, I don't even really know what Whitsuntide is. Apparently, it's big in Europe and Northern Europe. I think it's timed to be I think it's 7 weeks after Easter, and it the from what I understand on the calendar, it kind of fluctuates between May and June and inaugurates the summer season, and so this happens every single year, imparting the idea from Frazer that this fixed term idea did get codified into these early societies, and what they would do, it gets synchronized with Christian practice, but the earlier pagan practices in these areas were to have a leafy vegetative king that they subjected to all sorts of different sacrificial rituals. And they would chase them through the forest. They would do these mock executions with blood bladders. Okay. So they would use fake blood to symbolize an execution of the king, right? They would use effigies, and everybody in the community is kind of like, oh yeah. And what they're doing, it's like we don't necessarily need to kill the king. What we do is that we can kill this effigy, we can kill this stand-in and do this play acting, and we can still have the beneficial harvest, we can have the stability of the kingdom, because what's important is the psychic release. Okay. And oftentimes this involved the reviving of the king. They would have these doctors or whatever that would bring the king back to life after he'd been gone through his trial and his execution and all that. And we see this similarly with the carnival festivals. Typically it's associated more with the burning of this effigy that they would have at the beginning of the carnival festivals. And carnival is a mysterious thing to me. You can go to the next slide if you want to, Jordan. I'm not super versed in it. I've never really participated in any of these. Carnival is more widespread throughout the entire world, and it's mysterious to me because again, it's a synchronization between religious festivals. I think it happens at the beginning of Lent. I'm not a Catholic, so I don't know a lot about Lent, but apparently Carnival means like farewell to meat. So you've got this period after Lent where you're not supposed to eat meat, and then in time, it all these different pagan rites, like especially in like South America, whatnot, get blended with it, and you get this mock execution of the Carnival king. And Fraser understands these to be interchangeable: the Whitsuntide Divine King, the Carnival King, and the tree spirit specifically that we looked at with the King of Nemai that got this whole thing going on, who then is kind of revived, if I understand this correctly, by Asclepius. But that is the general sort of pattern that we're going to be looking at today. Now, what's fascinating to me about this is if we look at things from purely this cultural anthropology perspective, everybody in these communities, they know when they've softened up the rituals that no one's really dying, right? They're not so low IQ that they think when they have this straw man or effigy or something like that they're passing judgment on and killing and reviving or whatever. They don't really think. They're just kind of all engaging. And it's not unlike, I guess, some of our like Christmas rituals or whatever. Like everybody knows that Santa, sorry, spoiler alerts, like Santa's not real. I hate to say that. Okay. But everybody kind of just plays along, right? So everybody's kind of playing along. So this means that like there's a historical precedent for like crisis acting. Like they have like fake mourners, and they have fake juries and fake um, king deaths. This is a long established practice that, like, I guess what I'm trying to say here is crisis acting has a rich and storied tradition, and it looks like Fraser has documented that for us. Now, the problem is people who claim that crisis actors are real today are faced with this issue that if crisis acting is real, okay, I don't want to get too much into it because I'm not trying to stir up a bunch of conspiracy stuff. Okay. You've got people in the innermost sanctum who know about the crisis acting. And then you've got your schizo conspiracy pattern recognizer people on, on the outside who know it's crisis acting. And then you've got everyone else in the middle. You've got the 90% in the middle. You got the 5% of the psychopaths and the 5% of the conspiracy theorists. We know what's going on. Then you've got everyone else in the middle who watches TV, who thinks it's real, right? And so this creates like an asymmetric knowledge basis, unlike in these smaller societies where like everybody was in on it. In the scenario that we're talking about, when people talk about crisis acting, you've got only about 10% of the people, and they have diametrically opposed perspectives on what's going on, are in the know. And so what that does, unlike when you have these smaller societies where there is this replenishing of psychic energy and everybody feels it together and is on the same page, when you have this asymmetric distribution of the knowledge of the mock ritual, it creates a psychic rupture, something that's unfinished, that in many ways is calling back. People can't let it alone. You can't move on from it. And it kind of sets up the next thing. For people can't move on from JFK. And in some ways, that might be a good thing because it allowed for the ascent of Apollo and the transcendence that people supposedly felt when they watched man walk on the moon. So it creates a bit of a psychic rupture with this asymmetric knowledge. I'll pause there. I've been talking for a little while.
Yeah, professional mourners are obviously a historical thing, or at least it's on the
But if
historical
you
record.
but if you were to say that today,
It's in the Bible,
you,
it's in all of these Greek plays.
but if you said there were crisis actors or professional mourners today, I mean, I don't know. Am I going to get this video not banned because we're talking about it?
No, because of the way we do. Like, I was Googling it, and they were saying, like, talking about modern practices and how it's freelance work, and in some places it's more discreet, and then in some regions it's more obvious, like everybody knows it's part of a ceremony. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
The other thing,
Yeah.
you continue.
No, I was going to ask you if they have professional mourners in India.
Yeah, they do. They do. People get hired to mourn around in weddings, and not in weddings, in during funerals.
Funerals?
Yeah. Supposedly, if someone does not have that many relatives or does not have a strong connection to this community, so they hire to make a statement outside. It's about the respect of the family and how many people come to
Interesting.
you when you die. Everything is about what your neighbor thinks of you.
Interesting.
Way,
So it's
way,
a common practice to hire professional mourners in India.
not a common practice, but like I've seen scenarios that where it has happened. So like I've seen advertisements for it, like 2 3 times. Not It's not that every time I see them. It's not that I see a dead people every day, but I know of it. The the thing that you're talking about, yeah. I mean, the Japan thing, there's Japan, if you're talking about crisis actors and professional, like, the whole thing in Japan, it's about the commercialization of all these human relationships. That you can have a girlfriend for a day, you can have that mourner for a day, you can have a friend for a day, you can pretend to win a lottery for a day. Like the people will come to you and surprise you, oh, you won this lottery, and you can celebrate, and then they'll give you like $2,000 of the 3,000 you gave them. So then you can go drunk outside and celebrate with your friends. It's a weird thing. I'm going off topic, but what I gathered from I will talk about crisis, but I don't think you would appreciate that if I brought up the current scenarios. I think you posted about
Uh,
that guy who was always in the right place at the right time. But yeah, I think people would know about it.
I mean, the thing is about I'm trying to get beyond the whole conspiracy thing and not just be another conspiracy podcast. So but of course, I inflame it so much by the way that I talk. So it's hard. Just don't get me banned.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Sure,
think these are
sure.
so long. It kind of
It is interesting.
They
it doesn't know.
The AI can't really sort it out sometimes, but when we front load it, it can. So whatever.
the crisis actor thing, that it's like they know the psychological effect a crisis actor can have, and our world is so much image based right now. Like, you can the image is the most effective way to advertise or sell something. Like, if you're going to talk about image, the way a country's image is being sold to you is what matters the most about what people think of you. And like, it can either inspire people to be ambitious to reach you in some way, or it can create some sort of a racist kind of a trope about, because I saw that about my own country, what was happening, that people were deliberately posting these things and like they were going viral. So I thought, okay, image management, everyone is going to hate Indians right now. So I kept it in my mind, because image management is the most important thing, and you know how short images and can really affect your mind. So the crisis actors, they are trained people from the intelligence agencies, and they create these emotional images for you to latch on to, because you're not going to have a personal connection to that person. It's all going to come through the filters of the news media and everything, like, and the people you trust, they're going to tell you these things, and then they'll tell you where's your outrage, what kind of things like that. It's about, they know this, that this will affect people, and then they utilize it. It's just that the crisis actor thing, and people are very shameless, like in some countries when they do that. um, the other thing that I want to talk about in this chapter was the thing that jumped out to me was about the eyes wide shut thing. The way you talked about the crisis actor and the way Ziegler tells it, this was whole
Oh
a
yeah, he
charade.
does.
Yeah,
He
he
says it's a
tells
sham.
him
Yeah.
it's all a charade. Nothing happened to her. It was it. He tells it as if it was a mock death, and then
Right.
it's left very ambiguous, because the woman in the party is not the same woman that who is lying on that on the slab on the morgue. So it's
Right.
like it's woven into that, ambiguity is woven into it. But and the other thing about the mock ritual as well, like mock courts being set up, the whole thing about Tom Cruise in Eyes Wide Shut is that he walks into a court hearing of some sort, like his character is being judged, who is he,
That's
and he's being
that's
judged by
right.
all these faceless people all around him. And then a woman comes on, and then she says, I'll redeem you, then so I'll take the punishment for you. She's like she's exchanging herself. It's the same thing that we heard about the king, setting up a slave to take the punishment for him, and then he can
Yes.
go on scotch free.
Yes.
And I also read this about, in I was reading about the Civil War, and it says that you if you were conscripted and you are rich enough, you can pay for a substitute to get conscripted on
Right.
your behalf, and then you can, so it's like monetary things. They can let you off. They can help you clean your clothes pretty well and keep them clean. Um, that jumped out to me. And what else? The other thing, yeah, the King of the Nemi story. It talks about that the King of the Nemi was supposed to be very strong, and he had, because the king had to survive getting
Right.
shot at, so
Right.
he's supposed to be very strong all the time. And it's they have connected it to his strength as to the virility of nature itself. So if his body is not
Yes.
strong enough to represent the virility of nature, the strength of nature, he is not supposed to keep that spirit in him, and he has to let it go so that someone new can attain that position and keep it in a very virile and strengthful position. But what jumped out to me was that he was a runaway slave. The king of the wood, the first one, they talk about it. He
Hmm.
says that he's a runaway slave. That that uh, that had my gears turning in that way, that it's not about particularly the king of the Nemei and that lake of Diana, and he's protecting that tree. It's about the whole history of human civilization. So it's like you're in a tree, and a seed falls off from a tree and it gets planted somewhere else. That runaway slave is like that seed that flew away and gets planted somewhere else. It's like
Yes.
you're kind of expanding your domain, and like the
That's a
basic
beautiful
structure.
analogy. I love that. I
Yeah,
really love that analogy.
yeah, it's like the basic structure of your civilization is that a guy will come and fertilize, whatever, a human would come and fertilize the land and then protect it until he is not able to, and then he has to fight off other people. And then a whole, it's like I saw this king of Nemai scenario as the basic unit of how a civilization is established. In that way, I started to think of it in that way.
Well, let me ask you this. Um, Something that occurred to me while I was listening to you talk is, if this is the basic foundational unit, right? And we see this replicated throughout all these different cultures that are supposedly unconnected from one another. And then we find ourselves in a situation in the 20th century where we have all this advancement in technology, in mass media, and we have the developments that go on in philosophy and the Enlightenment, where we're supposedly distancing ourselves from all this savagery and barbarism that Frazer has documented. That doesn't necessarily negate the um, the reality and perhaps the importance of these rituals, though we may delude ourselves into thinking that we have broken away from this tree and that modern man is like fundamentally different. So we might find ourselves in this schizophrenic scenario where that reality has to be continually acknowledged, while at the same time no one actually believes in modern society that they are participating in these things. So I'm sitting here thinking about, like, because I don't know if I believe this. There've been so many people that have, not so many people, but the interest in the Golden Bough has come from people saying that the JFK assassination was a killing of the king ritual. And it does seem to fit, if there is this asymmetric knowledge and the precedent for crisis actors and all this other stuff, like it does seem like, I wonder if there are people in control who say, "Hey, we don't want to do this. We don't want to stage mock executions and things like that and do all these rituals, but we kind of have to in order to keep civilization together, because the truth that Fraser discovers in the Golden Bough is really non-negotiable. It's woven into the human frame, and we as the elites or whatever, it's our responsibility to keep things going. And yes, it sucks that 90% of the people don't know that, but we kind of have to do it anyway. So we end up in this schizophrenic scenario where there's this psychic rupture between what the majority understand and what the people who actually rule society understand and what they have to do. I'm just trying to be empathetic to our overlords here. What do you guys think about that idea?
Jordan could weigh in on it.
Oh, yeah. I don't have a lot to add that you didn't say, to be honest. But it is interesting. It's like Harris say, it's almost like a game of telephone. Like, oh, this is what's going on. And then it's very possible we are all just shadow projecting onto this,
Yeah.
these different world events, these templates. But I do agree. It seems to be at least at one dimensional level. I don't think it's probably the case at every dimensional level, but on some of these layers of reality, this seemingly is just the template. Like, things are wound up in such a way that when they start to unwind, this is how they play out. I don't think we're stuck within that, if that makes sense. So I don't want to frame it that way, but it does seem to be sort of this law, if you will, of certain layers of reality.
Well, yeah, and that might be the reason why the Pop Tart people are cannibalizing their
Yeah.
anthropomorphic mascot. Do I think the people at Kellogg's have read the Golden Bough? No, I don't. I don't think they have. I don't think they have. I think, I don't know the story of this, but I feel like they were like, "Hey, uh, we're kind of we're kind of stuck in this food market. We there's an oversaturation. What, don't you have a kid in college who's like kind of a stoner or something like that who could come up with something wacky? Oh yeah, I'll give them a call. They do a presentation, and then it just kind of builds on itself. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there is something deeply kabbalistic and esoteric and motivated by secret societies. You know, when they die, right? They have one eye closed, and maybe this is a reference to Votan or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, it does seem to be perennial. And let's just say a bunch of college kids, they took a risk on some college kids coming up with like a marketing campaign, like it's just kind of flowing through them.
Yeah, it's hysterical.
This is so surreal.
I remember too, when learning about the hero's journey and everything, it bothering me that everything fit in these templates. Now it's just endlessly amusing. It's crazy.
This is so crazy. And I don't know. Osik probably, this is like Osik seeing this blew my mind the first time I saw it as an American. And Osik is like, I'm in India seeing this. This is crazy.
Yeah, we're insane.
Yeah. Osik has this perception that like America's is like highly civilized and enlightened place. No. Anyway, Osik, what do you think? Do you have sympathy for our overlords?
I kind of resonated with that idea for a bit because one day I thought maybe I am the guy. Let me put myself in their shoes. Like, what would I do? Then I thought, like, oh, this is just a renewal for our culture. This is keeping people together. I was thinking about rationalizations, what kind of rationalizations they would give to themselves. But the thing that after reading this chapter about the mock executions, like your theory about JFK not being there, it's like, or some other guy being there, that had some kind of held some more water. But now that you have walked back on it and said that, it's like it's like the thing about Santa. Like, don't people want to believe. It's like they don't know that Santa is not real. The thing, I think that's the basic point of what you were trying to say, that people don't know about it, so we're not going to tell them. And to make it as effective as it is, then it's like we have to do it for real.
Yeah, that's interesting because there is a sizable, like thinking about Santa. Yeah, like how powerful is the Santa? Look, Santa is a conspiracy, right? It's like the first conspiracy, right? Like you have, I mean, the government is in on it. They like track Santa with NORAD, right? Which should raise some very interesting red flags when you're talking about imagery that's provided to you about missiles and satellites and things like this and space stations. But so the government's in on it. The parents are in on it. Your friends' neighbors are in on it. The only people who like aren't in on it are the kids, right? And the fact that the kids aren't in on Santa, if let's say everyone knew that Santa wasn't real, would the ritual even exist? Would we have to come up with something else?
I mean,
Would we have to
you
invent
could.
new myths?
It would be in the strain of what would speak to the child's consciousness. Like, the Santa myth is so, lucrative for the child's consciousness. Oh wow, it's gonna bring me gifts. It's their little world, and it's designed for that world of their imagination. And the parents exist to see onto them what kind of naughty things they're doing, and that's the little world, and that's the main problem in life. And then Santa is there to reward them for not being naughty. And
Yeah.
so that's a it's a I mean, yeah, I think we could. It's a good incentive. If it's not Santa, it could be someone else. Oh wow.
We're tracking Santa. Yeah.
Oh
We're
my God.
tracking asteroids. We're
It's
tracking
working
we're tracking
overtime.
all sorts of things. Yeah. All right. Yeah, maybe in the future when the Santa mythology dies, we'll all be like worshiping Pop-Tarts or being visited by the Pop-Tart fairy or something. Okay. We got we're 45 minutes in. We got to make some progress here. So as much as I could stare at Pop-Tarts all day, I really could. The next slide, let's just look at it. Maybe this is news to both of you. So this is a Vanity Fair article. So you can trust it. The Inner Sanctum has authorized this, and we're going to do a little A/B testing and see how people can handle this. So this guy, I believe is James Robinald or whatever. He is like super deep in this JFK lore, and he produced about 2 years ago. He produced this article, and it might be contained in one of his books that he's been putting out. He's been putting out JFK assassination stuff, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I got this." I got this footage, this film, because there's always something new. I'm getting in my YouTube feed, I'm getting all this JFK. So I've never been particularly interested in the JFK conspiracy stuff, but now I'm getting it. There's always new disclosures, never before seen things, but there's always like an element of editing or something that's been taken out, leaving like fingerprints of the real story. But apparently, shortly before Kennedy actually died in Dallas, um, and it was a different time. I remember this as a kid. We didn't have the internet or things like that. We had like every once in a while we'd break out the camcorder and make our own movies and things like that. Apparently, they in his free time, JFK and Jackie and friends would make home movies. And one movie that they made involved JFK being assassinated. Okay. And the way that they portray, and Jackie was the one who supposedly came up with the idea. Jackie was the director of the mock execution of her husband in these home movies. And apparently they went all out and they used Heinz ketchup to simulate blood and whatnot. And then and then it actually happens. All right. So what are we to make of this? Like, we have looked at all these different literature figures that JFK identifies with. Theseus in Mary Renault's book, The King Must Die, King Arthur, who dies of a mortal head wound, Macbeth, Jackie orchestrates the Shakespeare night where the murder of King Duncan scene is enacted at the White House on October 4th, 1961. It's in the sacrifice speeches that JFK gives at his inauguration and in Profiles in Courage. It seems like he has this preternatural understanding that his time is short. This is a man who's like either become comfortable with an early demise or seems to know. And it seems to be this very somber thing. But then at the same time, we're given these stories about them making these lighthearted assassination movies. So this, if I was a person skeptical about the reality of Dallas, this would be a strong piece of evidence. It's almost, I don't want to say it's almost like a rehearsal, Did you guys know about this? It just casually dropped, that JFK was making assassination movies.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
What do you think
Well,
when you see this?
even James Bond movies were not released. Why is calling it James Bond inspired spy film?
Because
The Ian Fleming, the books.
JFK loved Ian Fleming, and I haven't gotten too deep into it, but I think From Russia with Love had come out, or I'm not exactly sure on the timeline. He was reading from Russia with Love. I think in the run up to the actual assassination, Casino Royale, some version of it had come out, which stars Barry Nelson, who then is this avatar of JFK in The Shining. He does a very JFK style performance. Kubrick styles him. He's actually the first James Bond. So JFK loved Ian Fleming. I think it's a matter of debate if there would even be James Bond in the consciousness if it weren't for JFK. Because JFK, like Ivanka, was doing these reading lists. Oh, you want to be reading Ian Fleming. And we look retrospectively, oh, well, like life imitates art, or was like JFK saying, hey, you really need to be reading Ian Fleming because, well, the reality is going to constellate around this in some way. I don't know how, it's a mystical force, or is it something else? So that's why I tell people to pay attention to the reading lists.
It reminds me of the whole Civil War reenactments, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, people don't know about that either. You mentioned the Civil War. I love telling this to people. We have a lot of Civil War reenactors in America, and people think people don't think about it. They take their school children to see these performances and things like that, and I I love I asked people, I was like, when do you think Civil War reenacting like started? And people were like, I don't know, like the 30s and something like that. And it actually started in 1862 while the war was going on. They're called sham battles. And what would happen, because they didn't have moving images back then, right? They didn't have Walter Cronkite to tell them what had happened, right? Which I want to look at someday. Walter Cronkite, I've forgotten, breaks the news of JFK's assassination during an episode of As the World Turns with a spinning globe, and then he's the one who narrates the Apollo missions that provide us with the blue marble. So that's all very interesting. And there's a Nescafe hypnotic commercial that goes on during that, but that's another story. But so what they did is they would do these sham battles for people on the home front. They'd be like, what was the battle like? And they'd be like, it went like this, and I stabbed him with my bayonet, and I shot him here, and he shot me, and I got my arm cut off. Like, they would reenact this for people on the home front, and they'd be like, wow, that's so crazy. War, wow. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's
this
what they
is
did before they had mass media.
really fascinating. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
this is good. This one was. Also, I was thinking like, why would things like James Bond need to enter the public consciousness? Because what kind of wars were being fought? I mean, even as you were talking about his speeches about sacrifice and everything, I'm thinking like, what kind of crisis is he facing that he would be compelled to give such speeches? Is he ever giving any normal kind of speech, or is he always an ascendant kind of vision of life?
Well, I'm not some JFK historian. I've kind of by default have become one here a little bit. But I mean, look, there's a lot of like boring ceremonial things that go on with being president, and speeches, I'm sure, about economics that, you know, would interest Jordan more than me. But I mean, as far as like war posturing or whatnot, I mean, you were in the midst of the Cold War. He had to deal with the Cuban Missile Crisis. He had Castro in his backyard, right? So we didn't have like and then you have the ramp up of Vietnam, which we're going to get into with the whole Ace of Spades. Vietnam's, it's my understanding, at least starts on Kennedy's watch and then gets amped up under LBJ. But that's a whole other story. And I'm
Like,
not some Vietnam historian. All this stuff happened way before I was born. So like, you know, I'm
yeah.
not really in a greater position than you guys to understand it all. I'm just old.
The thing is that, like, would the Cold War weigh so heavily on the minds of the people that
Oh
it
yeah.
needed to be addressed every day, kind of?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, because they were living in fear of nuclear annihilation. What they were doing here in America is they were making like the school children like hide under desks as if that would protect them from like nuclear fallout or something.
Uh,
This is why it's so important to think about the atomic weapons and JFK and the moon landings all fitting together in this mythological narrative. You know, even as a child in the 80s, let me tell you about the 80s. Okay. Even, you know, in the early mid 80s, when I was a small child, like I remember having existential fear about annihilation. Like I remember like seeing TV shows and news and stuff like that, and they'd be like, "Well, what if a nuke was dropped on DC?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I probably wouldn't be incinerated right away, but maybe after a week I would die." Like I had like thoughts like this. Now I was a very strange, you know, fixated child. I'm still really the same person today. am obsessed with things that never happen. But, you know, maybe other children lived carefree, maybe because they believed in Santa. I never believed in Santa. I don't know what it's like to believe in Santa. That conspiracy didn't work on me. So maybe Santa has like a protective effect. But as a small child, I was losing sleep about nuclear weapons and getting one dropped on my house in particular. So I can only
Well,
imagine what
apparently,
people in the 60s felt like.
yeah, they were making so many of them, like as per reports, like every five every day by the
Yeah.
1950s.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it took them almost 2 years to get one, and then suddenly they're making five a day. Like, how are they? Like, it's so strange that they would be able to turn this around in such at such an industrial scale. Like 2 years and then five a day. That's a huge leap. Like, even with the resources, how would you get so much plutonium every day? Like, maybe they are doing it. I don't know.
Well,
I have to
that's
research the
because
logistics of it.
they're made in the mind.
Their mind, yeah. Those things are
They're
mined
made.
from the
You
earth.
see, you see one mushroom cloud, then you've seen them all. It's then you just replicate, replicate, replicate. You know, and
Yeah.
then you have Walter Cronkite being assuring you that you know that's the way it is, or whatever his tagline was. It's like, okay, I guess we're
Yes.
gonna destroy ourselves with nukes.
The other thing about that thing about JFK recommending Ian Fleming is that in my imagination, I never see the before the 60s, before his assassination, that there would be these guys that are spies and agents that are colluding together and doing these high-end stuffs and setting up assassinations. Like in my mind, in the mythology of my mind, I don't see that in my head. But as soon as he dies, it seems like, oh, if that's relevant, I can picture all these things, all these actors working together, coordinating with each other, and it's weird. Like the 50s, it's very hard for me to even imagine that is spying going on. It's like I'm talking about the mental imagery. Like, and I'm an outsider, so maybe the people there, they would have some better images of what it was like. But the way I get from the movies and the way this narrative is being told, that this cold this timeline is so like fragmented very cleanly, that Cold War happens and it goes on till this date, but it's like I don't have appropriate images for the 50s that would indicate some kind of spy things were going on. And as soon as Kennedy gets assassinated, I can picture everything. And there were even movies coming out about secret agents. Like the first James Bond movie came out after his assassination. Maybe the second or something. I'm not sure. But like
Well,
that
that's an
under the
interesting
cultural
idea.
consciousness.
Yeah, it might be something contained more in literature. I was there, I was just watching a video before we got on here. A lot of great writers were associated with intelligence agencies, so maybe it's there. Um, okay, we got a lot to cover still. We're an hour in, so why don't we go to the next one? Let's talk horses. All right, so we're going to be talking about horses for a while, and I mentioned this at the outset. We're going to be looking at JFK's riderless horse at his funeral, the spirited Blackjack. I'll say this now, but Blackjack was this he was just known as a hot horse. He means that he was too frisky to ride. And I remember watching like replays of this funeral as a child. I noticed the horse in Kennedy's funeral parade just not subjecting itself to the discipline of its handler and the solemnity of the event. And I want to talk about that, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. I want to bracket that for right now. Some things I want to point out is there's something very uncanny about this term blackjack that circulates around JFK. For starters, the horse itself, um, it it. Let me put on my glasses there, or Jordan, if you can zoom in on Blackjack's plaque. It was foaled on January 19th, 1947, but it entered the 3rd U.S. Infantry Stables on the JFK assassination day 10 years earlier. Exactly 10 years earlier. Entered in on November 22nd, 1953, if I'm able to see that correctly. So the horse itself has one of its most significant dates associated, and in some ways foreshadowing, one might be able to argue, though, that's me taking some liberties here with the actual assassination of JFK or Jack Kennedy. Now, if we can go back to the slide, Jordan, thank you for bringing that into better view for everybody at home. Blackjack is associated with JFK in a lot of different ways. His father-in-law, John, is that Vernon? Gosh, I can't. John Vernal Bouvier III. This is Jackie's father. He was known as Blackjack. Okay, and the horse itself was named after this very serious, very severe World War I general named John J. Pershing, who went by the title of Blackjack. It was a very racial and pejorative nickname that was given to him because the those who were under his command did not like the way that they treated him. And then we have Jack Ruby. We have another Jack. We've got all these Jacks. We've got Jack Ruby, who assassinates Oswald. Okay. All right. So these are some of the Jacks, and not to mention Jackie. You could argue that the Jackie and the Black Morning, she's another type of blackjack. But okay, not so when you think blackjack, or at least when you thought blackjack at this time in American history, because there was no internet, because people had a lot of downtime, a lot of people played with the standard deck were bicycle cards, okay, and they had and so everybody was playing blackjack and it became known that these cards, because of how they were embedded into U.S. military operations with the troops that had downtimes, that they became part of a psychological operation, specifically in Vietnam, which Kennedy is associated with. I think it started at the beginning, but became more pronounced throughout, were the ace of spades, although it was known for being associated with death and taxes long before the Vietnam War, was considered to be profoundly unlucky by the Viet Cong. And so American soldiers, when they would go through the villages, through the jungle, they would put these ace of spades on bodies as like a calling card in order to induce fear. Whether or not it did, I think there's some controversy around that. So when you think blackjack, the natural blackjack of 21, you can get blackjack a bunch of different ways, but one of the most natural ways is with an ace and a blackjack. That's what we typically think about blackjack. Now, how do I associate, outside of Kennedy having this riderless horse, which his spirit is supposed to be on top of, how else can we connect Kennedy to blackjack? He's got the father-in-law named Blackjack. He's got the horse named Blackjack, but it's through the King Arthur mythology. The code name for JFK was Lancer, which means Lancelot. And when you look at a deck of cards, they have lots of lore and mythology associated with them. I'm trying to think who, it's natural for me to think that, okay, if JFK is associated with a card, maybe it would be a king, like the King of Hearts, or who's also the Suicide King. But these are associated with different historical figures. It neatly maps on to the Jack of Clubs. Lancelot universally is regarded as the Jack of Clubs. So that's why I have Kennedy's head here on an ace of spades and a crudely photoshopped Jack of Clubs. Now, digging into this a little bit more, I found out that Jackie, in the immediate aftermath of the assassination, was the one who was responsible for putting together the funeral for JFK and its symbolic elements. And so when JFK dies, she's like, oh, and she's got to make funeral plans. She goes, I want it to be like Lincoln's. Well, what Lincoln, no one had gotten this riderless horse ritual done between Lincoln and Kennedy. Lincoln was the last one to have it prior to Kennedy and Blackjack. So I looked into it. I've known this for a while. Kennedy had a riderless horse. Lincoln had a riderless horse at his funeral known as Old Bob. Now, why did the horse have the name Old Bob? Well, so it wouldn't be confusing with Lincoln's son, whose name was Robert Lincoln. Okay. So there was New Bob and Old Bob. And so we have this riderless horse who has a nomenclature, a name identity with the son of the fallen king. And then you have Blackjack, and then you have the son of Jack Kennedy, who is JFK Jr. or Jack Kennedy Jr. So both times that you have this riderless horse, you have children with the same name of the riderless horse. And so the parallelism, where there is no escaping this. There's always like, oh, Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln and stuff like. These are so superficial. The synchronicities go way deeper than people even talk about. No, I've never seen anybody talk about these horses and the children connection. So I'm trying to step back and understand what I think is happening here. And this involves getting into cartomancy and tarot, which Jordan can fill in. I've got that in the next slide. It seems like, given the naming of this horse, Blackjack, from the martial military figure, Blackjack Pershing, there is something being communicated here about how that state power, perhaps you want to say it's deep state. I'm not really sure. I'm not really. We want to talk about the powers that be. All right. And you have this very spirited Blackjack foal, right? Who either is perhaps identified with Kennedy in some way, who tried to rebel against that order, right? This is the story that JFK was going to like splinter the CIA into like 1,000 pieces or something like that, and he was trying to get us away from these more draconian military enterprises and get us into a softer, kinder future, or something like that. But ultimately had to be subjugated to that symbolic martial power. And we do not see, we see JFK Jr. He dies lucky, right, in an untimely death in an airplane, right? And we have Bob Lincoln. Neither of these successors are able to take the throne, right? So there's a tension there that the rightful heir has not replaced the death of the king that has been killed. So and perhaps this contributes to the psychic rupture that I spoke about earlier, that is a result of those who are in the know and those who are not in the know about the symbolic rituals that are going on here. This is me speculating, and I don't think, given the fact that this horse entered into service on the Kennedy death day 10 years earlier, like this seems like too advanced for like evil secret people to coordinate. I feel like this is like the pattern demonstrating itself, and us being able to take this poetic license with these symbols without positing it like Illuminati or something like that. But maybe someone else would look at this and be like, oh, look, this is clearly what they're doing. All right, I'm going to pause there and let you guys weigh in on this.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, this is a fodder for the minds of the people who are into pattern recognizing, and I really love
Mhm.
this one. And the thing you talked about at the end, that the more I stay with your details, like, because that realization that someone else is puppeteering things from behind, like every little detail, that kind of notion comes when you have limited details. But as soon as you keep getting more and more details about everything and see more coincidences, it gets mathematically impossible for people to coordinate this, right? So even when you talked about the 22nd of November 1953, I could see the date of his birth is 19th of January. 19th of January is also a date when presidents are sworn in, and it's also 119. So it's also the 11th day,
Ooh.
right?
Ooh.
And then he died on the 37th day of the year. Okay, so it's like I can see these things, but again, it's so hard to coordinate. Maybe it's like he's being bred to be that kind of horse. That would be too, I think, demonic to even like think about. Like they're specifically breeding this horse, or maybe they are changing those dates after the fact to connect. I just don't want to think about it again. As you said, I'd rather have God doing these things, like God wanting these things to happen, than like people fabricating details, or making people be born, making horse be born on particular days for some symbolic ritual or something. But yeah, this is again also Jack of Clubs. I thought like, okay, that is an interesting thing that it's related to the Lancelot thing. But then I also remember that Jack in The Shining is clubbed on his head. So I thought, okay,
That's right, he
maybe
is.
it's like he is the Jack of Clubs. So it's like I don't know where it goes, but okay, I thought like he's Jack of Clubs. Then what? Is the Jack with the axe? I don't know which Jack is that. Maybe it's the Jack of Spades or something. It's something. Okay, yeah, this is what I thought about it, and maybe Jordan can weigh in.
Yeah, Jordan's gonna have a lot to say about all this.
Well, next year is the year of the horse.
Interesting.
So maybe we'll start to see more horses on the timeline, though here in Northern Virginia, they are ever present.
Is it the year of the horse? I thought it was the year of the snake.
I
That's
could
what
be
I had.
wrong. Let me Google
That's
it.
what I had heard. Oh, by the way, I
Yeah,
forgot to
it's
mention
horse.
this. Oh, okay. Hey,
Yeah.
I forgot to
Fire.
mention that Jack Ruby owned a nightclub, so he was a kind of
Correct.
a jack of a nightclub.
Correct. I kind of took that for granted here. Yeah, I know you have some stuff on the next slide that kind of continues to unwind the cards. Do you want to just
Yeah,
continue or do you want
let's
to?
go there. Let's go there because that's where it's really gonna pick up. Um, okay. I mentioned earlier
You did.
that the default deck for playing cards in America were these bicycle cards. Okay. And so even though there's not like a bicycle in the Kennedy funeral and the horse is not named Bicycle or something like that, it's mentally it maps in kind of the same place. You're talking about blackjack, you're thinking about your deck of bicycle cards. All right. And what's interesting about bicycle cards is for printing standard reasons, they always had this 808 associated with them, right? And bicycle is two wheels, and then the 808 is like you have it's like infinity signs stood upright, right? So you have a cycle of infinity, an absence, and a cycle of infinity, which is interesting when we talk about the parallelism between the funerals and just the lives of Lincoln and JFK. You seem to have the repetition of the pattern. You have the cycle, one cycle, another cycle. And I wonder if that forms some sort of mental nexus when we look at this blackjack horse. This is a deck. This is one of those psychological operation deck. This is a deck of that's just full of ace of spades that they gave out to the troops. I believe these are from the first Iraq War. They were trying to do that again. I don't know why Saddam Hussein would think the ace of spades would be particularly troubling. Although I remember as a child, I was like 11 when this happened. They came out with these Desert Storm deck of cards, and it was like so weird, right? Because I was really into baseball cards and stuff like that at the time, and then they came out with this, and they had like the generals on the U.S. side. Like I remember, like Norman Schwarzkopf had his own card, and then the Saddam Hussein. Oh yeah, they had those. That was different. They had like American forces like trading cards at home, but abroad, in order to like capture the bad guys, and they did this with like the second Iraq War too, they assigned bad guys to certain cards, and Saddam Hussein was the ace of spades in that deck of cards. So maybe that's why they did. And they're like, oh, we're gonna throw these spades around so people know we're coming for Saddam or something, which whole other issue. But something that I found that was interesting about the there you go. There you go. Yeah. With Uday and Kusei, his sons. And I remember Paul Bremer announcing this stuff from the mission control place in Iraq. Is crazy.
This was such a sham war. This was particularly a sham war. Like,
Well,
oh, the Saudis killed you. Okay, well, we're gonna attack Iraq and Afghanistan right now. It's just nobody knows about anything.
I mean,
Yeah, no comments.
yeah, yeah. I'm not. I'm already in hot enough water. Stuff I've talked about today. Yeah, it raises. You know, I don't. There are people out there who think that war isn't real and that it's all just like strategic demolition and relocation. That that feels tough to assent to, but there are people who maintain that idea. Okay, if we can go back to the slide. So, what's interesting, something I noticed as I was looking through these bicycle cards, it is interesting to me that the Joker card in the deck of bicycle cards is a king. It is a king riding a bicycle. So you have a trickster king. Now, why is that interesting to me? This gets back to Odysseus. Odysseus, who I think we've established pretty well, is a trickster king and associated with JFK. If we are playing cards, I wonder if this becomes something worth talking about. I was going to have Jordan. Oh yeah, I don't have anything else to say about it except for that. It just struck me as odd that that the bicycle card, and it's got like an 808 milestone back there. You can see it. That it would be a king trickster, a king joker.
Yeah. The like, why would you associate the bicycle with the trickster? It's written in that book of symbology that bicycle is associated with
This is
trickster
actually
figure.
it may, I don't know, like I think this passage. I want Jordan to read it because I think it's relevant when we think about the bicycle. By the way, I have associated the bicycle with the infinity sign. I see an infinity sign. Other people have done this as well. You can just do a Google search, and there's like, I think there's even a company named Infinity Bike where it's like somebody riding the infinity sign. This is, I don't know how to talk about this because this symbolism is like removed at least 1 degree or 2 degree from the symbolism of the blackjack horse. But I don't know how to talk about its charge. I feel like it's just what our brain makes these maps, and I feel like it's adjacent and at play and potentially speaking to us through our connection to the archetypal layer. But I was going to have
I mean,
Jordan read this entry. I was going to have Jordan read this entry from the Penguin Dictionary of Symbols on bicycles and to see if it's illuminating in any way. I think it might add a layer. But before we do that, do you want to say something, Ostic?
Yeah.
I was thinking about the trickster king as they used to call Richard Nixon Tricky Dick. So he's like a trickster king.
That's
Um,
right. That's right. He is Tricky Dick. And the whole thing about Nixon's like caricatured as having this long proboscis, this long nose. And it makes me wonder if that's like somehow synced up with like Pinocchio, and the moon landings happened on his watch. So I find that to be
Yeah,
interesting.
that makes
And
sense.
yeah,
Tricky deck.
yeah,
Do you mind if we take a short break?
yeah. Let's take 5.
Okay.
I have some thesis I'm trying to prove here about bicycle symbolism, but I think it's interesting to meditate on it, given the claim that I've made that one could not think about blackjack, the riderless horse, and not think about a deck of bicycle cards.
Okay. Yeah. And of course, it shows up in the culture a lot. We have the whole bicycle day, Timothy Leary. It
Yeah.
looks like 2 eyes. We could riff on the
Oh,
bicycle a lot.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't even think about going the LSD route.
Yeah. And all of that is totally woven in with all of the intelligence stuff. JFK is adjacent to all the intelligence. They for sure used this symbolism in some of their programs. And you were talking about the deck of cards itself being an intelligence programming tool.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Bicycles often make their appearance in contemporary dreams. They suggest three characteristics. One, as a means of transport, bicycles differ from other vehicles in that they owe their motion to their riders, whereas others depend upon an outside source for their motion. Forward progress is determined solely and exclusively of any other source of energy by the rider's personal and individual efforts. Two, balance can only be maintained by forward motion, just as in the development of the external or inner life. And three, only one person at a time can ride a bicycle. Tandems are a separate subject. Since the machine itself symbolizes evolutionary progress, dreamers, quote, mount their unconscious and develop through their own inner resources without losing the pedals by inertia, neurosis, or infantilism. They can count upon themselves as independent people, assuming the appropriate personality and unbeholden to anyone else in their development. On rare occasions in dreams, the bicycle is an indicator of real or psychological isolation brought about by excessive introversion, egocentricity, or an individualism which inhibits social integration. It corresponds to a need for normal independence.
Okay, I have some initial thoughts here. So, if the bicycle symbolism is in play, which to be honest, and I don't know what this phenomenon is, the more we look at it, it seems like it is, which raises an interesting question of whether or not this is our subjectivity or it's objectively underlying it all. But um, I think the first thing that comes to mind, if we are inhabiting some sort of collective dream and we are seeing some adjacent symbolism to the bicycle, is, and this goes back to the blackjack itself, and we'll look at this in regards to cartomancy with the ace and the jack. The jack is, and Jordan can elaborate on this a lot more, is this spirited, charismatic figure who meets the, I guess, the true source of power with the ace, right? And we see some sort of terminal fate brought to that figure. Um, it seems like to me one way that you could read this is, and if one was going to be um benevolent or interpret benevolent motives, is that there is, in order for us to make technological progress through with the symbolism of the bicycle, it's going to require more independent thought, more individualism in some ways, although there does seem to be a coda to that idea here in the text that you just read. And I've wondered about this, like, there are so many discrepancies, things that make no sense, that are baked into all these conspiracy topics. um One could posit that this is just the result of human ineptitude, and this is what happens when government and secret societies try to pull off these rituals on a mass scale. But some of them are so obvious. We talked about 9/11 earlier, right? Like the implosion of Building 7, right? This is not hard for anyone to get their mind around, and that it's hard to imagine that this was allowed to happen, or it seems like there is some force out there that is putting mistakes into things on purpose so that perhaps we will accelerate in consciousness, keep going, and individuate. Now, maybe this is God. I don't know. But that seems to be one, or if we want to bring it back to the whole JFK thing, like the where do we even begin about the anomalies in the JFK stuff, the missing frames from the Zapruder footage, or whatever else. Like, there seems to be things baked in so that it will arouse independent thought.
I
Well, I
mean,
think as one. Go ahead.
the thing you're talking about, raising consciousness, I think that's the technology that was left by the aliens for us to advance as a species in the monolith. So it's like,
Go on, bring it home.
I think you would be the better executor of that, but I was trying to analogize what you were talking about with that thing in the narrative of the movie. But also, I think that's a very strange symbol. I never thought about it. It's like your motion is very circular, but it ends up creating forward momentum for you. It's like the motion itself is responsible. It's like sometimes people talk about libidinal economies, or even my bank account freezes itself unless I deposit money and take out from it every 3 months or so. Otherwise, it freezes. It's like your motion is required for you to progress. It does not have to be some kind of progress forward motion itself. Just the in and out itself. It's like the cycle thing is itself. It's going around in circles. It's not supposed to lead anywhere, but it ends up taking us forward. I mean, I thought about it in that way. Like I imagined that whole circular thing that was rotating in 2001 in a Space Odyssey when I thought about the bicycle. I thought, okay, these are the wheels of history that are turning around, something like that. But
You know what's interesting when you bring up that imagery? I always associated the space station wheel in 2001 with like a reel of film, but it does kind of like when you look at like a movie projector, it's got like the two reels. There's something there is some symbolism with that as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a good image. Now I can understand that.
Oh
That's a
yeah, that's a good one, especially if we're talking about life being a movie.
yeah. Even the monolith,
Yeah,
if you look at the film 35 millimeter, and if you look at how
yeah,
those two films are separated, they are separated by a little cut. That's a black strip. It's not covers the entire screen, but so it's like we're looking inside an edit when you're looking at the monolith. It's like we're looking between two frames. I mean, if you're
yeah.
gonna take this as a literal analogy, so are you aware of that? I thought I was the only one who was in possession of that information.
I have heard about it. You know, it's rolled around in there at some point. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But then it gets into this whole idea that where you know, it seems like we have like an Earth time, and then we have this higher time. We've talked about this in regards to bringing Mircea Eliade into the conversation about hierophanies and how like sacred time discloses itself through certain events on our timeline. And in a way, when with the Apollo missions, we have something so transcendent. It's almost like something from outside of time reached our timeline and unified everyone at that particular moment. And I think that's relevant when we're talking about these cycles of progress when looking at the bicycle. Similarly, when we look at the all the mythology that surrounds the Kennedy presidency and specifically the funeral and the myth making that was happening there, it's again, it seemed to be this moment where the two types of time interact with one another. Jordan, what do you think about this passage?
It's super cool. I don't often think about more quote contemporary objects or objects that aren't implicitly in nature as symbols. I know I know we do talk about them a lot and um last episode you brought up Nikki's analysis on cars and karma. So no it's there, but I think typically when I think of symbolism I think of beetles and vultures and these things that are within nature and the bicycle of course contains platonic forms and elements that arise out of nature, but it is
Mhm.
a configuration of them by humans to create quote technology. So I think
Right. Well, I
that's
mean,
interesting.
yeah, I mean the wheel, right?
Yes.
So I mean the bicycle is predicated on an earlier symbols that may have emerged out of nature. I mean, this is an interesting question I've never really thought about. The idea of the wheel,
Mhm.
was that derived from something that's readily available in nature, or is that purely the result of man's technological consciousness?
Yeah, I'm kind of sitting here with what does it mean to have two cycles, two
Yeah,
wheels? They are correlated, they move together, but they are on separate axes
they
on
have
a
different
bicycle
forces. Yeah, and they have different forces applied to
applied to
them.
them.
Yeah, and
Yes.
they are the same but different.
And I also think of I, I don't remember the name of the maps, but when you make a map of the globe flat, you
Hmm.
wind up with these two
Yeah, the
kind
planisphere
of
stuff. Yeah,
ovals or circles. It sort of looks like the sphere unfolded
yeah.
with the two. My dad rode, well, he still can, a unicycle. So I'm also thinking about how this metaphor applies to unicycles even more so. You really have to keep moving
Well,
or
it's
or
interesting,
you
right?
fall.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting how the entry had tandem bicycles. Like, oh, that's a whole other subject, and of course that relates to 2001 with the bicycle
Uh-huh.
that's built for two. And I've contended somewhere that that's a story about transhumanism. What's going on with that, with Hal singing that song? But
Yeah.
I mean, look, if the deck of cards was named tandem rather than bicycle, or tandem bicycle rather than bicycle cards, that would be huge. But thinking about the different wheels and what they mean, that the one wheel has the force applied to it, and the other wheel is the one that kind of does the steering or is responsible for
Mhm.
the directionality. And I think that's curious. Like if we were to think about Lincoln as the wheel that the force is applied to, and the Kennedy wheel as being the one that is taking us in a direction, I think that makes this symbol even more interesting.
Mhm. I agree. Like one is, as you said, pointing the direction and the other is providing the energy to move forward in that direction.
What do you guys think about Jackie being like in the wake of Kennedy's death, being like, I didn't know this. Like I had not really studied up on like presidential funerals. It's just by
Yeah.
doing the Apollo work I'm here. Jackie's like, yeah, make it like Lincoln's. Like, uh, what? Like,
I
I
don't
mean, I don't
know.
know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. Jordan, if
Mm.
if I died, would you be like, oh, I got the plan. I got
We
the
should
plan
talk
here.
about that. I don't know.
Maybe I should. I got the
Yeah.
plan. Yeah. We haven't really talked about it, but yeah, make it just like JFK's.
It's a little expensive.
I know, but you see what I'm saying? Like,
I'm just being silly.
I guess it's like obvious in a way. Like you could say, like, oh well, who was executed in such a public way as my husband?
Sure.
Lincoln's the only one that really comes to mind. Although there are other presidents that were assassinated,
Only
right?
one other. I think Garfield.
I don't know. You, I keep going. I'm curious. William McKinley, James A.
Yeah.
Garfield in 1881, William McKinley, JFK, and Ronald Reagan. Although Reagan survived, I think McKinley survived.
I think so.
Um,
You could add Trump if we're counting
oh yeah, got him in the
attempts.
year. Yeah, and that wasn't ketchup at all.
Yeah, you did have ketchup on the
Yeah.
slides.
Well, isn't that crazy though? Like how much what Fraser was talking about them use like these cultures that time has forgotten, how much they're using like blood bladders and squibs and things like that, and like how that's you know people like that's an unheard of thought. Oh no, no way you could do that today. And like people, they were doing it all the time back then.
It's like when I learned, I think, I forget why I learned this. It might have been through the valet stuff. I don't remember. But there were hoax moon landings in, I forget when. It was like
Oh, the
pre.
19th century. Yeah.
Yes. When I learned that, I was like, whoa, everything just cycles.
So, okay, back to presidents that have been assassinated real quick. James A. Garfield, he was shot on July 2nd, 1881, and he suffered for months and then finally succumbed to infection and poor medical treatment in like 4 months later, September 19th, 1881. And then William McKinley was shot on September 6th and then died 8 days later of gangrene um, in 1901. So there were two other presidents between Lincoln and Kennedy that died, although both Garfield and McKinley did not die immediately, right? Like within hours of being shot, right? One lived another 4 months, Garfield lived another 4 months, McKinley lived another 8 days. So I guess you could say, well, Jackie's looking for a precedent. He's like, well, Lincoln's the only one that fits this model. So maybe that makes sense that she would say that and be like, okay, just do it like that. Apparently the eternal flame was her idea too.
That's
I don't
super
know
interesting to me.
if she got it from the being in
Greece.
France and seeing the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier or whatever. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And and we have this idea of infinity or eternity associated with it, right? Which kind of connects this bicycle symbolism. Man, I thought we weren't going to have enough to talk about today because I only had 10 slides, but we surely are. We probably should make some progress here. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah. Also, I do find it notable that the ace of clubs. They put the
Let's say spades.
No, that's a spade. They put the ace of spades on the front of the card deck for most of them, unless they're a special edition or something. And even then, it's usually modified. I think it's interesting that that's what they choose.
There's a whole story with it. It goes back to like, Ostic shared a video in our group chat about how they would tax, like, the way that they got taxed is like they would, they couldn't like tax gambling directly, but they would like tax the cards, and so they would stamp the ace of spades. So it gets associated with death and tax as a result of like tax collecting purposes previously. And because they would cycle through so many decks, they collected a lot of revenue off of that. And I think somehow, I don't know the entire story, but the aces got more ornate and more distinctive as the result of these practices. There's more details to it than that, but it has some connection to that.
Different, but kind of related. All of my grandparents' card decks have holes punched in them because they're all from the casino.
Interesting.
I believe they only use the deck once, and then they punch it so it can't be used again, so you can't mess with the deck. And so we have all these hole-filled cards.
Yeah, I don't gamble, so I don't know what it's all about.
It feels symbolic to me, but
it does. Okay, so I was trying to get ready for this, and I was like, you know what? And then I was like, okay, when I'm looking into the meaning of all these decks of cards, like I'm practically doing some type of cardomancy. And I was like, wait, like tarot, like, and then I remembered that the deck of cards is I remember like all these warnings against playing cards because the cards themselves are somehow connected to tarot cards and divination. And that got me thinking about the connection between the ace of spades and the jack of clubs in regards to tarot. And they do have analogs. The ace of spades tarot card is the ace of swords, and the jack of clubs tarot card is the knight of wands. And I believe that is Lancelot there on the steed, who we even analogize to Kennedy, which is so interesting because it's like we're talking about Kennedy as Arthur, but also Lancelot. Like, what's going on here? Like, because I think if I don't know my Arthurian legend well, I think at some point like Lancelot becomes a rival of Arthur. I don't know, but some of the imagery that I looked into with the Knight of Wands, and this is really going to be Jordan's wheelhouse. She can talk more about the tarot stuff. Is this Knight of Wands? I believe this is supposed to be Lancelot on this Knight of Wands card, which is interesting because he's got that stick. And this kind of goes into a sexual dimension to the cards and the energetic life force of the young Jack, who is perhaps, who is at the service of this larger power and is ultimately cut down. Although from what I understand, the Ace of Swords and the Ace in general can also be a sign of initiation into the mysteries and transfiguration. It's not just about death. It could just mean the termination of one form of consciousness into another, which would sort of map onto this theory that I'm like, really the conspiracies in some way are because they have error baked in and are supposed to be deciphered by people of high functioning pattern recognition or whatever, that they're ultimately there in order to breed a type of mass gnosis, which some may argue is a type of mass psychosis, but that they might actually be there for it. So we're seeing some sort of transformation of this knave meeting this initiation card, and really it's the whole society is being initiated. Interestingly enough, and then I'm going to let Jordan talk about these cards a little bit more. Carl Jung did touch on tarot a little bit. Jordan, do you want to read that quote there? It's a little. You can probably zoom in on it better.
Yeah.
Or you got it?
I can read it.
Okay.
It also seems as if the set of pictures in the tarot cards were distantly descended from the archetypes of transformation, a view that has been confirmed for me in a very enlightening lecture by Professor Bernoulli.
Yeah. He has some remarks on tarot cards scattered in some of his seminars. I think he even tried to do like a divination experiment with this and the I Ching. I think it failed for some reason. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not an expert, but I do want to bring this back to Jung. And I think there is something important about the archetypal imagery that's associated with the cards. I don't have it off the top of my head, but some of the in the playing cards, like I think the King of Hearts is associated with King David. Um, and there's one that's associated with Charlemagne. So there are these different historical figures. The queens, I think one is connected to Helen of Troy, and this from all these different mythological stories and biblical stories. It's not just like there's the biblical understanding of the cards and the Odyssean understanding of the cards and the Arthurian. They kind of mix and match, which is so interesting to me.
Yeah, there's a tradition of also creating specialty decks that lean more into different archetypal frameworks. You can find them about everything.
Yeah.
From my cartomancy class, Rune Soup with Gordon White, he mentions his Golden Girls is a quintessential
He's got a Golden
deck.
Girl deck.
He does. Yeah. And they will all speak to you. You don't have to have the most serious deck, I think, to get some working magic out of it. But yeah, I think that goes to show these cycles, these patterns are everywhere. So yes, I think what Jung is kind of saying here is, and similar to what you're doing, Luke, and kind of zooming out, we don't really have to rely just on the Kubrick material or even just the Odyssey material. You can go up a few layers and view it more from the more a priori, it's not the right word. Platonic might not even be the right word, but those
Yeah.
those forms that are not so clearly manifested in particular details. But yeah, as you said, it's all about cycles. We talked a lot about alchemy probably a month ago. I would say alchemy is the foundation of everything. So any system that you're studying, whether it be tarot or just symbols in general or astrology, having that alchemical foundation is really helpful. You can import it into any system. There's a lot of different traditions of cards, different schools, and you will find too that the Crowley school, if you will, has their own associations with these things, but they all fit into kind of these bigger themes. So if we're talking about specifically, the Ace of Spades and the Crowley tradition, from my notes from class, it's the root of the powers of air. So I always think of ace. You kind of said about endings and beginnings. To me, the ace is always about the seed of the idea. We discussed that earlier today. And the knights are very much associated with action. They can be people, they can be events. I think when it comes to JFK, we can certainly interpret it both ways. And in the case of the Jack of Clubs, we have kind of, let's see what we have in our chart. The Knight of Clubs is a clever, enterprising young man. Could be a friend.
Yep.
And it does say here within the TDM tradition, there's adequate resources for the task, but an unclear path. So that's pretty interesting to me. Um, yeah, I mean, we could go on and on and on about cartomancy and tarot.
Yeah.
Young didn't write
Well,
as much about it as I would have thought before looking for it, but he's clearly very well versed in the patterns.
no.
And I personally, I think I want to get a King Arthur deck. I think that would be super fun. One of my own decks that I love is based off of currency. So every single card uses real images of real money from all around the world throughout time. And it's so fun because you see the same archetypal patterns. It kind of shows you how they're being used throughout just throughout many different cultures, and how money itself is really this magical it, it's energy, right? It's energetic exchange.
Yeah. Something I just wanted to acknowledge here, and we do have to keep an eye on the clock. What time do we need to be? What time do we need to finish, Jordan?
150, like that's it.
Okay. All right. So we have 22 minutes. I think we have 3 more slides on horses and cards that I want to get through. So,
Okay. Can I say one
oh,
last thing?
oh, sure.
Just to simplify, in tarot, there's probably more, but there's 2 primary cycles happening. Well, 3 if we add the major arcana. But in regards to the pips, which is the ace through the king, and in regards to the suits, so the suits, if people didn't figure it out, I think you can intuit already. It's the 4 elements. So you can go back into the alchemy lectures we covered and just import everything you know about that, or just sit with what is water like. And that will give you a lot of insight into what these cards mean. And then the pips, the ace through the king, that is all about cycles. So all the way from the semination of an idea, all the way to the full manifestation and realization of it, and all the things that come with that. So I just wanted to get that in there.
Something I just want to point out real quick is that I guess there are spiritual labels that are attached to these different tarot cards, and to the Ace of Spades. Like I mentioned earlier, it's associated with initiation in this esoteric way. It's also known as the Order of the Magi, which is interesting. And the Ace of the Jack of Clubs has this label, the Divine Messenger, and respectively, they're air and fire signs. Something I forgot to mention, and I don't know. I was like, this is kind of iffy, but I'll throw it out there anyway. Blackjack had a tattoo on his neck, and I guess it's the branding number. I'm not exactly sure, but it was 2V56. And if you interpret the V as 5, so it'd be 2556. You would get, I guess, 18 or something. Is that right? 7 and 11, right? You get 18. One way that it's like, if it's like 2V, like 2 5s, and I translated it to 5556, you do get 21. But I don't know if that's taking too many liberties. And then you get a blackjack.
Yeah, that's right.
But
That makes sense.
that's they're kind of reachy.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, who knows about this one? I also wanted to add just one additional imagery that I thought would be associated with the Ace of Spades. So you mentioned it's also about the finality of law and fate, and also like it's supposed to be initiation of a new thing, radical transformation of a cycle. So I just wanted to add to that what do you do with the spade? You either put it in the ground to plant a seed, or you put it in the ground to dig a grave. So the spades is used 2 ways. So it's about digging a hole, and the hole could be for planting a seed or for burying a body. So I thought that was
That
like
is
in line with
interesting.
this one. Just that.
That is interesting. I think there's a long military history of association with spades as well. And I don't know if that means that spades were weapons at some point, or just part of ceremony, or like you're saying, digging trenches or whatever. But Yeah, that's a great observation. Jordan, why don't we move to the next slide? Okay. So there is what and Jordan, would you mind reading some more, or do you want me to read, or do you feel like reading?
Sure. Where do you want to begin? At the top?
All right. I just want you to read these 2 paragraphs. I think they're illuminating for a lot of reasons. I went to the Penguin Dictionary of Symbols and looked up horse. There's lots of different types of horses. This is the entry for death horses, which that's what blackjack is. So let's think about what some of the things are here and zoom out.
All right. In terms of semantics, crepe, regards this sinister horse, be it black or white, at the root of the French cauchemar or English nightmare. The Mart, German mare, is an evil spirit from the underworld, as the word indicates. I'm going to skip to the Celtic folklore is haunted by death and nightmarish horses. The March Malian, malignus in Latin, was one of 3 scourges of the Isle of Britain. Scottish kelpies are horse-like water demons, and Britain folklore is full of tales and stories of diabolical horses, which lead travelers astray or dash them into quagmires or morasses. In Britain folklore, black horses are, as often as not, the devil himself, or else one of his imps, or a soul from hell or purgatory. On other occasions, they may be ridden by some wild huntsman, of which King Arthur is the most famous, doomed eternally to chase a quarry which he will never catch. It is significant to observe in passing that in the oldest versions of King Arthur's Hunt, the king, with a pack of white hounds, should pursue, so typically, a lunar creature as a hare. Donteville regards this King Arthur as a Celtic homologue of the Germanic Wotan. A related legend, that of the White Lady, should be studied since it reverses the symbol's polarization by giving it a sexual significance. At the same time, the steed in this wild ride becomes all gleaming white in such regions as the Jura and the Perigord. The lady in the white dress rides through the wind-tossed woods, and the sounds may be heard of her horses, hounds, and huntsmen, and the music of her horns. At first, they play a warlike march, and then the tune softens into one able to open the glowing gates of pleasure. A glittering white steed, and music which starts as tunes of battle and ends as tunes of pleasure. Such are the beginnings of the rise of the horse symbol from the realms of the underworld to those of the sky.
Okay, so there's a lot. Thank you very much. That word slightly obscured by my arrow there. I got a little overzealous when I saw a lunar hare figure is homologue, which I guess is like, a replication of this Odin myth, the Wotan myth in English in Britain society. So when I read this, I was like, oh, blackjack is black as night. He's a horse. He's a mare. He's a nightmare, right? So the fact that the nightmare, right, is on display on American television sets is, I think, too rich to pass up. Not to mention, because of the Nightmare on Elm Street movie franchise that came out in like the 80s or whatever. That's a clear reference to the assassination of JFK, right? Because JFK at Dealey Plaza is assassinated on Elm Street, right? So you have the nightmare and Elm Street here. And the black horse is being associated with the underworld and the devil himself. Again, this gets into the frisky nature, or potentially that, it's so weird. Like blackjack, animals can sense things, right? Like animals sense things that humans blind themselves to. And a lot of people are like, oh, blackjack was this undisciplined horse. Was Blackjack trying to tell us that something was wrong about this whole thing? Like the fact that if you go back and watch it, it was for hours and hours. They tried to say oh, he didn't understand because he kind of had a rider on him, but he didn't. So he didn't understand like what the role was that he was playing in this sort of thing. And he's bucking the entire time. I feel like this is a very rich symbol, especially if the horses themselves are kind of like psychopomps or incarnations of the devil, perchance. And we talk about, JFK sitting on top of it as like a ghostly figure, being unable to tame it in some way, or fighting against it, or struggling with it. I think this is really profound. Not to mention that King Arthur himself supposedly rode one of these horses, right? So this gets back to the Camelot imagery that is associated with the Kennedys. And I did not know this, and I've not been able to verify this. So it makes me wonder if the internet's just really bad, or if I've got to go deeper into this. But the fact that I did find substantiation that King Arthur does chase this quarry, which I didn't understand what that was. It's a deer, I guess, some type of deer. But I guess in this, because the story of King Arthur goes through many permutations, from what I'm reading here, is saying that it once was the lunar hare, which of course is super fascinating when we think about JFK chasing the moon, right, with the Apollo program. And last but not least, the homologue with Wotan or Odin is actually connected to some people think it is etymologically connected to the name Arthur. I looked this up. It's there is some scholarly research out there on it. I do not have the background in this to be like, oh, that's garbage or that's true. It's interesting to me. So apparently Wotan was also known as the Allfather. And the Old Norse way of saying All Father is Alfar or something like that, Alfor. And so it is theorized by some people that that King Arthur's name came from this pronunciation of the All Father, that Arthur is Alfar, All Father, which is really fascinating when you think about what do authors do. They are the creator of a universe of ideas, of books or whatever. They're like the creator writ small. They kind of become the god of their little book. So I thought that was all really fascinating. The last thing I want to show here, more horse things. Last week, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? My friend Allegra, who works in the horse industry, she sent me the article about Sundance the horse breaking free from containment at JFK Airport and how it's synchronized with what we were talking about. I went deeper into these code names. So here they are. JFK's is Lancer. We've talked extensively about that, right? Jackie's was Lace. I haven't really thought too much about it. And Caroline's was Lyric, and JFK's was Lark. And we could go into that. But look at this. Rose Kennedy, Coppertone, right? She is the protector from the sun, right? Ethel Kennedy, Sundance. Ted Kennedy, Sunburn. So the solar imagery connected to the Solar King of Louis XIV and all these other characters is in the code names. It's in the code names. You have family members who have code names emanating out from the solar figure of JFK, which in some interpretations of the Arthurian legends, Lancelot is a solar figure as well, which I'm not prepared to go deep into it, but they both are. There seems to be, maybe there's some struggle there. I don't know too much about it, but crazy stuff, huh? What do you guys think? You think it's stretchy to talk about the Nightmare on Elm Street here with the black horse who's a mare who's as dark as night?
Not at all. I've thought about it just because I'm from the area, and it's a strange road right there.
Yeah. Osik, I know it's getting late over there. What do you think, buddy?
This is, I don't think I need to add anything to this. This is self-explanatory, and this is what we have been building up to, like what you've been building up to, and it's all connecting here. And I think it speaks for itself. Like all these things, it keeps happening, it keeps repeating on itself. So I don't think I have anything to add to this. I just think it's pretty strong. This one is pretty strong.
All right. Well, I'm good. Let's go to the next slide because I want to be mindful of Jordan's time. I'm going to be very quick about this. This was put on my radar by Downard when I read King Kill recently. The elm mythically has a lot of underworld uh, uh, symbolism associated with it. So the fact that he is killed on Elm Street is significant. Some of these that I have in the chart here, um, it's a symbol of a false dream. Right in Virgil's Aeneid, a massive shadowy elm tree stands in the entrance court of the underworld. False dreams are said to cling like bats to the underside of every leaf. Um, they're associated with heroic burial in the Iliad. According to the Iliad, mountain nymphs planted elms in the tomb of Idion. Elms were also planted on the tomb of, I need my glasses. Is that Proteslios? Is that what that says? Where they would wither and regrow in perpetual grief. They're also what they made coffins out of. They made coffins out of elm trees. It's also connected to Hermes. The elm was often dedicated to Hermes, the god who guided souls to the underworld. Its winged fruit was thought to assist souls on this journey. Many others, just a taste. The fact that it's just very uncanny that he's dies on a street with a tree that's associated with the underworld and death. I had no idea elms were connected to such things. Would I don't, yeah, what else can I say? But this is mostly Downard. I don't think Downard goes into as much detail as I've done here, but Downard also did not have Chat GPT to put it together for him. So thanks, Chat. Final slide before we bring this to an end, or do you guys want to say something about Elm Street?
I'm good.
Okay. I'm going to briefly talk about Weston, Apocalypse Now, and JFK. So I went a little bit, I did not have a chance to read it again, Weston's From Ritual to Romance, but I think the idea here, right, is to really just take Frazer's analysis of the death of the king ritual, all right, and what this means for the land, and put it into the Arthurian terms, which Frazer did not do himself, right? And the idea that is when the king is dethroned in an act of regicide, like we've seen in Macbeth and other stories, and it's amazing how widely understood this is in literature and how bereft we are of it in modern culture, right? Like, but it does, the idea that when Kennedy was killed, you really do think about the turbulence that followed from his death, all the social unrest. Of course, this is also connected to RFK being killed and Martin Luther King, another king being killed, which it seems like the universe is writing it out loud that the killing of the king ritual is happening here. Although I've not really thought about the JFK MLK connection as much. But you see all this turmoil as it creates a wasteland when that power is not there anymore, and perhaps temporarily housed in the eternal flame at Arlington, which, by the way, is not really eternal. It went out a bunch of times while they were building the more permanent installation, and then they went out again when they replaced it about 10 years ago. But that aside, it in some ways makes sense that things got really bad and really crazy in the 60s following Kennedy's death, especially with Vietnam. And it created the psychic rupture, which we talk about, and perhaps is really dramatically emphasized in Eliot's poem, The Wasteland, when we talk about what happens when the king is deposed. I need to get the Wasteland is very much inspired by the Golden Bough. Maybe I'll have my friend Bays Lit come on here at some point to help walk us through that. That'd be a great thing to happen. He's absolutely fantastic. So
He's your friend.
Yeah, he's my friend.
Bring him on, man. I'm a fan.
You know Based? You know Based?
Yes.
Ah, yeah. He's brilliant, isn't he?
Yeah, he's good. He's good.
Smart guy. Smart guy. So it would only make sense that this psychic rupture and people would somewhat try to close it in some way to experience the transcendence of the Apollo moon mission, right? You have the land being and the people and the psyche being destroyed because the rightful king is gone, right? And in some, if we go back to the MacBird imagery where people were translating Macbeth into the Johnson administration, you could see there's probably a lot of concern that the rightful king was not there, and that this was the reality itself was screaming out that something was wrong. And I just to the last thought I'll have here, and I'll let you guys close things out because we have 3 minutes left. Perhaps the reason why Coppola includes From Ritual to Romance alongside The Golden Bough in Apocalypse Now is to perhaps say something about how crazy and insane things had gotten in Vietnam as a result of the killing of the king ritual. And I think that adds a new layer to it. So that's all I have for today. I'll let you guys close with the final 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
And his mission is itself to kill another king, go down
Yes.
a long winding road, and to perform the same thing. So it's like, yeah, that's what I wanted. I'll study more of this, since now you have linked it to Wasteland and Apocalypse Now. I'll get back to the next episode, or the one after that.
Yeah, it's not going away. We're as much as I want to get back to outer space, it's not going away.
And we've got to reread the Odyssey.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I got my T.E. Lawrence version right here.
That's right.
So, well, I want to thank you guys. Do you want to say anything else, or should we bring this episode to a close?
I feel satisfied. I hope everyone had a wonderful solstice, Christmas, New Year, whatever. Time off.
Simply having a wonderful Christmas time. The moon is up. The moon is up. The moon is up.
It's an incantation.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.